All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining today. Last month, we focused on innovation, which is a vital part of keeping an organization at the ready in the marketplace. Yet innovation can historically cost years of time and millions with inherent risk. And will you ever see that speed to value? So today we're here to talk with these great panelists and learn how innovation and modern technology can be paired to grow your operational efficiency and your premium. We'll start off by some introductions. I am Angie Sinclair, technical pre-sales lead here for Instanda North America, and excited to be here on the panel today. A little bit about me. I have about 20 years in the insurance industry, starting off at an MGA and then moving to a large insurer where I managed multiple configuration teams in the policy admin space. Been at Instanda for about a year and a half, and really seeing a lot of growth and ways that people can be innovative and use technology since I've been here. We're joined by Patrick Albrecht, Stacy Brown, and Jason Russin. And so we'll go ahead and have them do some quick introductions. Patrick, let's start with you.
Great, thank you, Angie. Patrick Albrecht, President and Associate Insurance Administrators, AIA. Been here with this company about 10 years. Got about 22 years total working in the wholesale industry with a smaller and larger MGA. And I guess from the technology experience within the wholesale insurance industry, probably focused more on improving customer experience for within the MGA operation, the program administrator operation, and really just trying to bring more capabilities and efficiencies to our employees.
All right, Stacy.
Sorry, I had to find the mute button there. Hi, Stacy Brown, and I also have over 20 years in the industry. I not very wide, but definitely very deep. Worked for 2 insurance carriers in IT for 20 years, and had the opportunity to do a lot of things, which included from the older days when we used to actually code our policy admin and claim systems by hand, and more recently launched InsurTech Hartford, and have now gone full-time into that.
Excellent. And Jason.
Hi, my name is Jason Russin. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Incypher. I too have about 20 years experience, but mine's been a little different. I've worked in a variety of industries, but it's always been around helping new businesses achieve and manage growth. Throughout most of my career, I've been taking good ideas to market, and in most cases we started small and initially had to run lean and couldn't afford a lot of talent. This forced us to look outside traditional ways of doing things, and instead of just hiring more people, we had to build tools to do more with less. That's what my current company does now at Incypher. We build software to amplify agencies' surplus lines tax filing ability.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for introductions. So before we dive into questions for the panel, we're going to start with a question for the audience. So for those of you attending, what initiatives are you currently undertaking to increase operational efficiency? And we're leaving this poll open for about 30 seconds in total, so we're probably nearing the time that we'll close it here. Okay, so we've got 20% on straight-through processing, nobody focusing on that straight-through processing and claims, 40% on that new integration, which that seems to make sense. Removing paper-based processes, 20%, and 20% on reducing product maintenance. So to the panelists here, what are your thoughts or responses to these poll results?
I would say
Patrick,
that's
maybe we'll start
probably,
with you.
yeah, I
Perfect,
was gonna
thanks.
say, that's probably similar to our own view of what we've tried to focus on internally here at AIA. We have spent some time on that new integration piece to try to, free up our underwriters, especially to be able to focus more on the relationship development and be more productive. So that's a big focus for us. And then no answers for the or nobody saying the straight through claims processing is, we do have a claims department here in our as a program administrator. So I can understand that too.
Stacy, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, no surprise there about the lack of interest around the straight through claims processing. Claims, I was head of claim IT for several years in one of my roles, and claims is often second to underwriting in terms of investment in IT. So not surprised so much there. The availability of new data and things that we see in the marketplace coming to market all the time. It's definitely no surprise there as well to see that that's where a lot of people are spending their time.
And Jason, how about from you?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think we're just beginning to see the effects of software automation on InsurTech. I know we still have a ways to go. We're still playing catch up to a lot of other industries, like car manufacturing and finance. And so it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Excellent. Great points, you guys. So what are some of the common misconceptions traditional insurers have about digital transformation and adopting modern technology? Stacy, let's start with you on this one.
Sure. Probably, one misconception is technology is going to solve our problems. Right? Sometimes technology creates new problems, so you have to make sure that you start with the people and understanding what people need. And it's also an opportunity when you're going through digital transformation to look at how you do what you do, because it's really easy to bring automation into a broken process, because and all you'd really do is make your broken process work faster, right? So it's an opportunity to take a look at what's working, what's not working. And I think we've seen a lot of digital initiatives that involve taking these paper forms and turning them to PDFs, and then following the same process of reviews and approvals and things that we were doing before when it was just paper. So that's just an example of where there may still be some opportunity now that it's not just about having the paper document being shared as a PDF. There's the availability to extract data and make that data structured and communicate more efficiently through APIs.
Thoughts from Patrick or Jason on this one?
Yeah, I think one common misconception is that new technology is going to be difficult to learn or to implement, but the reality is that technology isn't all that helpful to the market unless it's easy to use, right? So nowadays, new technologies are designed to be easy to figure out, and the people who make these tools, they care about people having a good experience with their products. They want it to be simple for folks to learn. So when companies introduce a new technology, they want it to be easily adopted, and if they want it to be successful, they're going to provide things like training and support programs until everybody gets the hang of it.
So Jason, I know you mentioned in your introduction a little bit about what Incipher does, but I feel like this is maybe one of those new technologies. So can you just elaborate a little bit?
On which specifically?
Just on what Incipher does in general and how maybe you've seen it help. I clearly don't want to turn this into a sales pitch for you guys, but
hey, no, that's fine.
Cool. It is a pretty cool tool.
No, so for those who are uninitiated, the The non-admitted market is a difficult one to venture into. Writing surplus lines insurance can be fun to a point, but there's a lot of regulation around it. What we've done is we've created a software tool. I don't want to say TurboTax, but let's just say it was something kind of like that, which would automate a lot of the processes around surplus lines tax filing. Every state gets to regulate its own tax rates and processes and forms, and we take all that information, condense it into a single place, allowing people to very easily process these taxes and keep on top of things. Surplus lines taxes get really difficult and subject to intense penalties and fees. And so our system makes that easier, allows for more accuracy, allows a shorter time to file, in short.
Excellent, thank you. And there
Sure.
was one thing that that Stacy mentioned, and that's, just taking that process that you've done and kind of like, yeah, you change a part of it, but you don't really look at the whole process. And in my past role with other companies, that was something we said all the time is we're not recreating exactly what we have. If you're making a change, you're making it for a reason. It's a really great opportunity to look inward and say what's working, what's not, look for those efficiencies and try to make changes and grow either dollar wise or even time wise that frees up some capacity there. So just wanted to plug that in because I think it fit really nicely with what Stacy mentioned. So one big misconception about digital transformation or a focus on cost savings through technology is that it comes at the expense of that personal touch or even your personnel. So Patrick, what are your thoughts on how driving for efficiency impacts the people side of things?
Yeah, in my experience, that's one of the greatest fears that we run into when we're introducing something new from a technology standpoint, even with our company, or you hear about it outside of that, is that it's being done to replace people within the company in order to achieve the ROI or the cost effectiveness, the efficiencies comes at a cost of personnel. And as we've gone through this process, even in the last couple of years, we found that it's once you get past that fear, we never intend to replace people. Our intention is to make them more productive. So we found partnerships with specific vendors focusing on specific improvements within the process or extending more opportunity out to our customer. And in doing so, we found that the underwriters actually have more time. So whether it's reducing data entry, whether it's putting more information at their fingertips, they become more productive and really increase our bottom line, so that the ROI becomes more about the growth and less about reducing costs.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, did you have more to add to that?
No, I think it was well said. But I mean, this rarely happens that people are replaced by tech, especially in growing organizations. I mean, software increases efficiency, but it still requires human input and expertise. Like, I guess if an organization has felt it's reached its max potential as far as the market and cost cutting is its only goal, then maybe this is a fear. But any organization that cares about growth will take talent and repurpose it and grow other areas of the business. I know, like, for instance, one thing it's the buzzword right now is AI, right? Everyone's worried that AI is going to take their job. I'll admit that thought crossed my mind for maybe a few minutes. But AI tech today is only as good as the people directing it and giving it instructions. Things like AI have the ability to amplify talent, but it isn't necessarily a replacement for human talent.
So maybe just giving them more resources to be more effective is really, because I think I've seen it in past roles, it's that fear. And you said it, Patrick, is people, I mean, not only do they just fear change in general, a lot of time, but that fear of, well, what am I going to do, or will I be eliminated? And to hear you guys say that that's usually not the goal, it's really to grow in other areas is very refreshing. So I think, you know, trying to trickle that down to those other team members.
Well, Angie, I'd can I be the devil's advocate on this one?
Absolutely.
So it does sometimes happen that especially with digital transformation initiatives, which tend to be larger, more strategic, you know, bringing in a tool to do some process more efficiently, I agree that usually very rarely results in, you know, job losses. But a lot of times when you get into digital transformation initiatives, there's a larger strategy, and there's usually a lot of scale at play behind those initiatives. And organizations usually are looking for cost savings. And you know, the cost savings happens in two flavors, right? You have hard costs, right? Well, for example, software licensing, sometimes you could save by reducing old systems and things of that sort. But sometimes the hard savings comes from reduction of workforce. And but then there's soft savings, right? Where sometimes you're able to make your workforce more productive so that you can scale better and do other things. So there are situations where sometimes digital transformation, again, when it has to looking at a large strategic initiative where an organization is redefining the roles and the structure of its organization, that sometimes does lead to job loss. But what I think we're in a unique situation these days is that people have to remember that there's an overriding insurance industry talent crunch out there right now, right? So companies are more apt nowadays to find ways to upskill, cross-skill, and retain those roles that basically get changed or through elimination in big initiatives, because people need the talent. And I think that's what I really wanted to point out is that anybody who might feel that they're in a transformation program and at risk of losing their job probably don't have as much to worry about as they thought they did.
Great point. So when we're talking about kind of, you know, repurposing those talents, when you free up that you know, the soft cost, that capacity, what are the types of things you're typically seeing folks fill their time with, and how are they kind of translating that into growth for the company? And Patrick, let's go ahead and start with you there.
Yeah, our biggest focus has been the relationship development piece. So it's that personal touch side of it that is tough to recreate from a pure technology standpoint. So by taking some of those manual tasks that the underwriters or even underwriting assistants have done in the past and focusing them more on providing the higher level of service, the personal touch, the outreach, the relationship development side of it has led to more opportunity for us. And it's also improved our customer experience. So our customers are speaking with people directly. They're having value conversations versus just conversations trying to get an answer. It's more of a conversation that leads to a productivity on our side and answers and results for our customers. So I guess that's probably been our biggest focus as far as what do we fill their time with. And like Stacy was talking about earlier, a lot of it's training too. So as we take away potentially some roles of an assistant or underwriter or a assistant marketing type person role, that we're able to add more training to that individual to bring them up to a higher level of value for the company and even a higher responsibility type role.
Great, thank you. So I think Stacy hit on this a little bit. So this question is more for Jason and Patrick to see if you guys have anything kind of to add around it. But I'm just thinking about those short-term versus long-term saving opportunities for insurance companies when they're adopting that modern technology. And Jason, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. You know, I kind of have mixed feelings about short-term, long-term wins, you know, when implementing technology. And I think in what I've seen, it really just depends on the size of the organization. Like small teams can move fast. They can reap instant benefits from new features. Like in Cypher, we create tools to automatically populate tax forms or to e-file to the state. So you can take thousands of filings, batch it, and send it off. Smaller agencies we work with, because I can just flip a switch, get a couple people on board, they can see these returns almost immediately. But large companies, like especially, you know, some of these you know, the big guys, they just tend to move slower, and it takes weeks and months and a lot of people to adopt a new process. And so short-term cost savings, maybe not on their radar necessarily, but it's well worth the savings in the long run. It does take patience for these larger organizations, but it without fail does pay off. It really comes down to strong leadership in these larger organizations. The leader has to believe in change, has to sell the change, and have the right people in place to see that change implemented.
Great point. Any additional thoughts from you, Patrick?
Yeah, on the short-term savings, you know, I've been thinking about that a little bit, and going back to kind of what Stacy was talking about, if you're going to go in and replace a specific process and not really look at improving the process, then we're just replacing it with technology, I think you lose some of those savings. But if you're going through that evaluation as you're implementing new technology, that increases your efficiency, increases your throughput without having to add personnel. So your savings are, as you grow, especially in the short term, you're not having to immediately go out and hire new personnel to pick up on that throughput piece of it. So you know, from a short-term standpoint, that's what we're seeing. And of course, we're a small operation, kind of like what Jason was referring to, from a small operation, short-term savings versus a larger corporation. But yeah, and of course, in the long term, you're looking at lower turnover, you're looking at stronger partnerships, improved brand, and those types of things that come along with the investment in technology.
Great, thank you. So a common conversation I have with insurers often revolves around cost savings versus growth. And I think we've touched on this just a little bit, but many insurers feel that they have to pick one or the other, that operational efficiency or revenue growth, or at least can't work on both of those at the same time. So Patrick, what's your perspective on this? And then we'll bring it around the circle here to Stacy next, and then to Jason.
Yeah, I think our experience has really been around the fact that if you're not growing, you're becoming stagnant, and because of that, you really lose efficiency. You lose that motivation, that excitement around that comes with the growth. And I mean, if you're going to pick between the two, I think you have to say that, look, by improving the efficiencies, by bringing in some of these opportunities from a technology standpoint, at the same time, you're priming or creating growth opportunities within your company. So from our perspective, it's more of those go hand in hand versus being separate type focuses.
And Stacy?
Well, I think it is hard to do both at the same time, but it depends on where your starting point is, right? And remember also that cost in insurance kind of has two different angles, right? There's operational cost, but there's the loss cost, right? And it's very common for especially larger, more established insurers to want growth, but be more focused on profitable growth, right? Rather than just taking any old piece of premium. So they get loss cost efficiency by doing better underwriting, and that better underwriting sometimes means, you know, terms that they're not going to get the business on, and they're comfortable without getting the growth if they know they're being smarter about how they're pricing their risk and taking on less, you know, bad risk. And although it's been said that there's no such thing as bad risk, only badly priced risk, it seems that you know, the underwriting process can help while growing, can help reduce loss costs. And operational costs is usually a completely different team in an organization, right? It's usually, there's a lot of back end functions that could be trimmed and streamlined and things of that sort. IT systems that could be reduced and consolidated and things of that sort as well. So it takes it's hard to do both of those things at the same time, though, because you also find that, you know, you need certain skills around project and program management and an appetite for leadership at multiple points in the company to be willing to go through change, and that might even introduce its own risks. So I've seen programs, you know, start with. I've seen the movie where programs start with, hey, we're going to do this thing so that we can grow, and we're going to do that thing so we can save money over here. And then next thing you know, that it starts spinning out of control and becomes so big that they just have to put a bullet in the head and say, that's enough. This is getting out of control. Let's pick a focus, right? So, yeah, it's not impossible, but it's harder to do too many things at once.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you on this one specifically, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a big chunk of my day is spent with small, medium, and medium-large organizations. And I don't know, I think the idea that insurers agencies have to choose between operational efficiency and revenue growth, I just don't see it. I don't think these goals are mutually exclusive. Like at Incypher, we show how your software frees up teams from manual tasks so that their efforts can be put to a higher, better use. So I feel like and again, it's industry specific, it's company size specific, but we can easily show, and this is what I do all day in the sales and marketing, is show how our software creates return on investment stemming really from both sides, reduce cost and increased revenue both at the same time.
Wonderful, thank you. And Stacy, you mentioned those projects almost having that squirrel mentality where they start with one thing and then it kind of goes, you know, the project goes off the rails because they're adding scope along the way. So what are those types of things that can be done to help make sure those timelines and costs don't go up when you are having these types of transformation projects, like being able to keep those in check and have that very clear speed to value? And Stacy, we'll go ahead and start with you since you mentioned this one.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. That, you know, first off, not to go backwards to the last question, but I'd say there's kind of a difference between, you know, big C and little c in terms of change, right? You know, there's always room for continuous improvement type of change, regardless of what's happening strategically within the organization. And so there's always people looking at tools and processes and finding little ways of which they can chip away pieces of improvement, which if you have a good organization culture for continuous improvement, you can really make a big impact over time. But the question about can you just do me a favor and repeat the question?
Sure. It was just, you know, when you have those projects, you know, you've got your project to implement that new technology for cost savings in mind. First, how do you keep it from having that scope creep, you know, and keeping your timeline and those costs in check so it doesn't go off the rails, and then making sure that as part of that, you're recognizing that speed to value?
Well, I think that nowadays it seems people are moving away from waterfall projects where we say, you know, in 60 days we're going to be at this milestone, and in 12 months we'll be at that milestone, and everybody's feeling high pressure to get to hit those dates. There's still a lot of you business cases to be made and value to be proven. But I think with Agile, a lot of people are more focused on how do we get to speed to value first, right? How do we identify where we can add the most value, and how do we focus on getting there faster? So in the old days, instead of mapping out a 24-month program of all the different phases that we were going to go through and what deliverables were going to be in scope for each phase, I think people are more accepting over the idea of let's focus on the highest value add stuff and see how quickly we can get that done, and then reassess and set our goals for the next milestone. So I think Agile's been changing a lot of that, and it's easier to stay on target when your scope and time horizon is shorter and more manageable.
Yeah, I would say having those more manageable chunks and a maybe a smaller goal, even just to pick those up little by little to start seeing those gains is key, at least in the successful projects I've seen. Jason or Patrick, do you guys have thoughts to add around this one? Maybe projects you've been involved in that and how you kind of brought those things in to keep it in check?
Yeah, Stacy hit the nail on the head with that one. The setting the clear, realistic objectives up front and not trying to overreach or bite off more than you can chew is essential. In our most recent project, we got underwriting involved and our customer involved on the front end to understand exactly what is the need, what are we trying to do, and really outline that. And when we sat down with potential vendors and partners, that's what we focused on, was who could bring us the best and fastest type approach to meet that need, and then throughout the process really staying on focused on that target versus, wow, about halfway through we all of a sudden saw this opportunity and spin off and try to take care of that too. But cut that off. Let's focus on what we're trying to do here with this particular project, and then like Stacy was saying, reassess and be agile on that end of it.
Excellent. Jason, any thoughts from you on this one and projects you've been involved with?
No, I mean, just to reiterate, I mean, a project succeeds when you define the objectives, you've got a good plan, and you've got support from the top. I mean, the leadership really has to drive this thing, and just having people who are accountable. I mean, I've seen projects fail because nobody really knew who was in charge of what. So making sure that there's accountable people with clearly defined roles is all I would add.
Great point. So Patrick, earlier you mentioned that personal touch, and as part of these transformation type things, not losing that personal touch with either your internal team members or your end customers. So in what ways have you seen how investing in maybe the customer experience piece can create more savings for you?
Yeah, so one thing that we really locked into is on the marketing end, is that customer experience, that customer journey. What is it that drives a lead that we might identify through a number of different resources or avenues? What drives them to ultimately be an evangelist for our company, and trying to focus in on that journey so that and how do we use technology to enhance that journey? So looking at pieces like how do we make it easy for the customer, or in our case the retail agent, to get information to us, to get indications or quotes back in front of them in a quick and timely manner, but also engage underwriting in that process so that it's not just all on the front end type of a system. And so that was part of our focus in our project, in our recent project, was to how do we enhance that journey, and how do we enhance the tool and capabilities of our underwriters at the same time, which which I think is a big part of that customer experience and that journey from that lead to the evangelist.
Excellent, thank you. Stacey, any thoughts from you on this one? It looked like you were nodding along, so I didn't know if you had anything else to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think the claim side is an area where you can get savings while focusing on customer experience as well, right? If because ultimately the claim service is the ultimate customer experience that we are out there selling, right? And you know, I've seen it happen where everyone brings, you know, the organization brings a cannon to shoot a fly kind of thing, because they have this one like standardized process for bringing in claims, and whether it's a, you know, a $10 million property claim or, you know, $500 glass claim, it's like, this is the process. And you know what, if you step back and you look at it, maybe you can realize that, hey, some of this, you know, lower hanging fruit stuff could benefit from more automation, and we don't have to put all that rigor behind it that we would do on a larger claim. So and you're and so if you start from the customer perspective and you say, well, how can we make these smaller, simpler claims better for the customer, you might wind up with cost savings at the same time.
Yeah, so even, I mean, a little bit of that, if they've had that process for so long, it's just a really great opportunity to look back at what it is that you're really trying to accomplish and what your end goal is. And if that's customer experience and simplifying it, then it's a great opportunity to change that part, rather than saying, this is what we've always done, so we're going to continue to do it type thing.
Right.
So we're going to go ahead and start with some questions from the audience. So the first one that we have is, with so many emerging technologies, how should insurers research which will lead to lasting revenue and efficiencies versus which are just a time and resource vacuum? And you're smiling, Stacey, and you're getting a chuckle, Patrick. So maybe we'll start. Let's go ahead and start with you, Stacey, and then we'll kick it over to Patrick and see what thoughts Jason had.
I'll tell you, it's not easy nowadays, because it seems like it's technology soup out there, right? There's just so much, so many solutions, so many vendors, trying to tell the difference between them. But I'd say, thinking about the question, I was laughing at the part about becoming a time and resource vacuum, right? Because certainly, you know, you see these projects where, yeah, we can get live in 3 weeks, and then 3 months later, you're still sitting there trying to figure out how to get live. But what often you realize is it's not necessarily the technology's problem, right? So I'd say one thing would be make sure that if you're engaging with a solution and with a solution provider, that you're ready internally for that, right? And yeah, I've seen all kinds of things, including like it just takes 90 days to get through the procurement cycle, never mind how long it takes to actually get started with the work. And I don't know that anyone's solving that problem anytime soon. But in terms of knowing which solutions will lead to lasting revenue and efficiencies, I think you have to look back at the problem that you're solving as well, and making sure that the change that you want to make with the technology can be properly institutionalized and adopted. Because I've also seen technology solutions out there that get delivered perfectly on time, on scope, and then people go, well, I'm not using that. Right? So I don't know, kind of a you know, jumping around there with the answers, but that's some of my thoughts.
Wonderful. And Patrick, thoughts from you?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's that upfront understanding of what you know, what you're trying to do before you jump into it. So identifying where the opportunities are, and then also not trying to rush into a specific vendor. Take the time to get to know who's out there. There are opportunities through InsurTech conferences and things like that where you can meet and see what vendors are out there that may provide a solution, and you may come across somebody that you hadn't heard of before that you get to the opportunity to talk to and understand their product better. And then you can begin to filter that down to, what are the top 2 or 3 or 4 that we think can meet our objectives, and then go and then start that demo process, looking at what customers they're already working with, reaching out to those other customers that have used that product before, and you can get some real experience on what they've run into in working through that vendor. And that's really what we ended up doing in our last project, was talking to a few of the customers of the company we worked with before we engaged with them, and got some really good feedback, and that really solidified our our confidence in what that company could do to help us solve the problem that we had identified.
And Jason, thoughts from you?
Yeah, unless like the technology is 100% fresh, there should be resources on how to implement, certain technologies or implement change. There's usually really good case studies out. If the company is worth its salt, it should have case studies that you can learn on and see how that you can apply that technology to your company. A good company, again, if they're worth themselves, should have a good implementation process. And so trying to understand what resources are made available to you during the implementation of the software, and then post-implementation is important to understand. And then understanding what is your goal with the technology? I mean, it's often hard to measure success when you have these nebulous goals, or like, we just want to be more efficient, or we want to do this faster. I mean, setting hard numbers of, we want 200% efficiency, we want to grow revenue by this much, we want to process X amount more claims. I mean, it's those types of things that will lead to success. Being very clearly defined in what those goals are will make a big difference.
Great point.
One thing Jason said made me think of another thing that might be useful, and it's to look at a company's partners and see what partnerships it has, because
exactly,
most companies don't work and live in a vacuum anymore, right? And so companies that have strong partnerships with other vendors and ones that have good reputations, chances are there's a lift of that brand for some reason. So that's another good little thing to look at, I think.
Yeah.
And Stacy and Jason, you both mentioned something during your responses that I think I've had some personal experience with here since joining Instanda. And Stacy, what you said was client readiness. Yes, we at Instanda, we can deliver fast, but it depends on, is the client really ready? Do they have those requirements? Do they have the right decision makers in place to really move as quickly as they would like to move? So I think that's huge.
It is.
And then Jason, just that, who's going to be available? Something that we consistently hear in the sales cycle here at Instanda is, what's this overall, what's it look like? What does our implementation look like? Who's available to us? So just making sure you have those defined roles on the partner side, that new technology that you've just decided with and gone with, and then on your own side, and just making sure that those really marry well together, and that they're a cohesive team to get the project delivered.
Exactly.
And selfishly, I really liked Patrick's idea of going to InsurTech conferences to find new technology. Yeah, I'm just going to say that.
So last question from the audience. Are there any emerging technologies that you think all insurers need to incorporate into their strategy? And Patrick, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll hit Jason and Stacy.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, just from my perspective, everybody's working on the improving the rate quote buying systems that are out there on the front end for the customer. But I think that the most important technology right now on that emerging side is what technology is out there that can increase the bandwidth and the capabilities of your underwriters and your and as Stacy mentioned, on the claims side, your claims adjusters, because I think that's where the the opportunities really are right now with the, especially on the AI side, as Jason was alluding to earlier, there's some really interesting stuff coming out that helps an underwriter get more information at their fingertips. Same with the claims adjuster. That allows them to understand the insured or the claimant better, to understand what's going on. And if they have more of that information in front of them, they're going to make better decisions. And that ultimately leads to better customer service, improved profitability for the insurance company, and a better, ultimately a better customer journey, customer experience.
Right, Jason, how about you?
And to echo that, I mean, it is the buzzword right now. AI is everywhere. It's been around for a while, and it will be here to stay. It's got its moment in the spotlight right now, but it will become more commonplace. It will be more integrated into how we do business. It scares a lot of people. I mean, they think it's going to replace their job. It could replace some of your job, but if there was any advice I could give anybody, is I would tell people to understand AI and learn how to make it your friend, and don't run from it, because there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think it just maybe goes back to freeing up, using it in such a way that it frees up your time to focus on maybe where you really need to devote it. If you're thinking about that underwriting process, like, let it make that decision, and then you can focus on the really nasty risks that are probably a little more fun to underwrite anyway, because they're more complex and give you that greater flexibility.
Yeah.
Stacy, final thoughts from you on this one?
Yeah, I mean, AI's always been around and always will be around, and but for me, I think IoT is the one that still has a ton of upside that we haven't unlocked yet. I think there's been enough experimentation and implementations that have happened that have shown value, that more people should start looking at what these early adopters have been doing and figuring out how to better leverage it, especially on the property side, but in aerospace and in marine and in auto, there's definitely in product manufacturing, there's a lot of opportunities for IoT. And one thing I'll slip in there too is payments. You don't hear a lot about it, but man, insurance companies are still pretty darn inefficient about paying claims. And there's so many solutions out there for it. And so that would be another thing I would say is good for people to keep an eye on.
Great point, Stacy. So I want to thank our panelists here today for the great conversation, as well as our attendees for listening in today. Just a reminder that we will send out a recording of the session to the attendees shortly, in case you want to revisit any of the topics discussed. And I just want to say thank you again to Patrick, Jason, and Stacy for participating today. We very much appreciate it. And I would like to wish everyone on the call today a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you so much for attending.
Thank you,
Angie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.